I almost didn't record this video. Not because I was busy or I didn't have anything to say. I almost didn't record it because I didn't want to admit what I'm about to tell y'all. Earlier this week, I shared the lessons that my overseas job hunt taught me. The interview in Germany, the waiting, the strategy. And y'all showed up for that. Thank you. But here's what I didn't tell you. While I was posting about courage and faith and starting over at 59, I was also sitting on the edge of my bed at 3 in the morning staring at a job announcement, about to close my laptop and pretend none of this ever happened. One click. That's how close I came to quitting. And I think we need to talk about that. So here's what happened. It was a Tuesday. No, actually it was a Wednesday. The kind of Wednesday where nothing went wrong, but everything felt heavy. And I was reviewing a position in Germany. Y'all know the one I told y'all about a few days ago, the Landstuhl interview. And there it was, the grade, the step, the salary. Right there on the announcement. No mystery, no negotiation, just the number. And quite frankly, seeing that number at 59, it hits different. At 29, you look at a salary and you're calculating, can I cover rent? Can I save a little? What does my future look like? You're building. Every number is a step up, right? At 59, you look at the same grade and step and you're not calculating your future. You're comparing it to your past. 30 years of federal service. 30 years of climbing those grades, and here I am, voluntarily stepping into something that, on paper, looks like a step sideways, maybe even backwards, depending on how you count. And I just stopped. I sat there thinking about my pension, my retirement timeline, the house, the grandkids, the plan. The plan I'd already made. The plan that said I'd work a few more years at my current grade, collect my full retirement, and glide into Mauritius on a cushion of carefully saved security. But that's not what I'm doing, is it? This grade? Not really. It's about what that number represents. It represents almost starting over. Not building on top of 30 years, starting the climb again. And y'all, that's a different kind of math. So I closed my laptop. I didn't just close the tab, I closed the whole laptop. I stood up, I walked around my tiny bedroom, and I told myself, Vanessa, maybe this isn't your season. Maybe you're being irresponsible. Maybe starting over at 59 isn't brave. Maybe it's just foolish. You've got a good grade. You've got security. Why would you walk away from all of that? So y'all, I just sat there for 3 hours until my alarm went off. 3 hours of letting fear drive the car while I sat in the passenger seat with my arms crossed. And here's what I realized, and this is the part I almost didn't tell you. The fear wasn't about the salary. The fear was about what it cost to choose purpose over predictability. Because when you say yes to starting over, you're also saying no to the version of your life that was already working on paper. Think about it. How many of y'all have stayed in a space because the math made sense, even though your spirit had already checked out? How many of you have looked at a number and thought, I can't afford to leave? But the real cost was something the numbers couldn't show. So I did go back to the laptop. I did submit the application, but I need for you to understand, courage didn't feel like confidence that night. Courage felt like looking at a number that didn't validate your choice and choosing anyway. Courage felt like hitting submit, knowing full well that some people will look at the math and say, this doesn't add up. But you know what? The best things I've ever done, the math didn't add up on paper. That's the fear nobody talks about. Not the fear of failing, the fear of taking a step that looks like a step backwards to everyone else, but it feels like freedom to you. So y'all stick around and let's talk this out. Here's what nobody tells you about starting over at 59. It's not just your career you're changing. It's your identity. Do you know who you are when you strip away the job title, the zip code, the role you've played for 30 years? I thought I did. I was wrong, y'all. I've been a federal employee for decades. That's not just what I do for a long time. It was who I was. It's the answer I gave at parties. It's the line on the form. It's how I explained myself to myself. And then the kids grew up. The nest emptied. And I looked around and realized I'm not just leaving a job. I'm leaving the entire structure that told me who I was. Empty nest plus empty career. That's not a transition. That's an unraveling. So I've been thinking about bridges lately. You know how a suspension bridge works? There's the shore you left and the shore you're heading towards. But in the middle, there's just cables and air and the sound of your own footsteps. Nothing solid underneath, nothing familiar ahead. That's where I am right now. I'm not who I was, the federal employee with the predictable path. And I'm not yet who I'm becoming, the expat, the coach, the woman who figured out how to build a life overseas at an age when most people are decorating their retirement condo. I'm suspended. And here's what I'm learning about the middle of the bridge. It's quieter than you expected. Nobody's clapping. Nobody's handing out medals for attempted reinvention. You just wake up every day and you keep walking, even though you can't see the other side. I had a moment last month. I was updating my resume. Do y'all know what it's like to condense 30 years of federal service into a 2-page CV that makes sense to non-federal employers? Let me tell you, it humbles you real quick. And I realized I was grieving, not the job, not even the paycheck. I was grieving the version of myself that made sense. The Vanessa who had a clear answer to what do you do? The Vanessa who could map the next 5 years without a question mark at the end of every line. Sometimes we're not grieving reality, we're grieving expectations. The life we imagined, the timeline we created, the story we wrote in our heads. That's what midlife reinvention actually looks like. Not the Instagram version, not the I quit my job and everything was magical version. The version where you're standing in the middle of a bridge at 59, holding a resume that doesn't quite translate and choosing to keep walking anyway. So all right, y'all. Let's pause for a minute because I'm about to say something that makes people uncomfortable. I'm scared about money. And if that makes you squirm, keep watching because this is the conversation we keep avoiding. They tell you to follow your dreams. They write books about it. They make inspirational reels with sunsets and quotes. But nobody tells you what happens to your pension when you follow your dreams at 59. They don't. Here's the math nobody talks about. At 29, if you take a risk and it doesn't work out, you've got 30 years to recover, 30 years of earning potential, 30 years of compound interest, 30 years to course correct. At 59, oh boy, the runway is shorter. The math is different. And if you're a woman who spent decades in public service, the paychecks were steady, but the wealth, wasn't built. So let me be real with y'all for a minute. Moving overseas isn't just about adventure, although I do look forward to the adventure. Part of the math, and I've said this before, is that in parts of Europe it's significantly lower than what I'm paying right here. That's not the whole reason I'm going, but it's part of the strategy. And I want to say that out loud because I think some of y'all need permission to be both faithful and strategic, both called and calculating. I'd rather struggle in a space that aligns with my vision than stay stuck in a space that only values my output. But that doesn't mean financial fear isn't real. It doesn't mean I don't do the math at 2 a.m. It just means I do the math and I keep it moving. So here's what I've learned about this. Fear of money isn't really about money. It's about control. It's about safety. It's about the story we tell ourselves about what security looks like. For 30 years, security looked like a bi-weekly deposit, a benefits package, a pension calculation. And walking away from that, even towards something better, feels like jumping without a net. But y'all, here's the thing. What if the net was never the government job? What if the net was always God? What if the net was your own resilience, your own ability to figure things out, your own, and I'm going to use one of my favorite phrases, it's all figure outable. Because if that's true, then what exactly am I afraid of? Now, I can't talk about fear without talking about faith. They sit right next to each other in my life. They have for years. I used to think faith meant fearlessness. That if I really trusted God, I wouldn't feel scared. That fear was a sign I wasn't believing hard enough. That a woman of faith should be peaceful and certain and never, ever sitting on the edge of her bed at 3 a.m. about to close a laptop. But that's not what Scripture shows us. Isaiah 41, verse 10 tells us, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Now notice that this verse doesn't say you won't feel fear. It says, "Do not fear, for I am with you." The antidote to fear isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of God. I've been thinking about that phrase, "do not be dismayed." Dismayed is different from scared. Scared is the racing heart, but dismayed is the sinking spirit. It's when the fear settles in and makes itself at home. It's when you stop believing things can change. And God says, don't let fear move in. Don't give it a key. Don't let it redecorate. Yeah, fear still shows up at my door almost every day. But I've stopped inviting it in to stay for dinner. Here's what I've come to believe, and this took years. Courage is not about removing the fear. Courage is about learning to travel with it. Fear gets to sit in the car, but it doesn't get the steering wheel. Think about this. Fear is in the car with you. It's been in the car with every brave person you've ever admired. The question isn't, how do you get rid of the fear? The question is, who's driving? Because when fear drives, you end up back where you started. When faith drives, you end up somewhere new. Fear still talks the whole way. It gives directions. It'll tell you to turn around. It'll critique your parallel parking. But it doesn't get to touch the steering wheel. And that's where I am right now. Fear's in the passenger seat, talking nonstop about pensions and grades and what will people think. And faith has both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. So my friend, wherever you are, maybe you're not moving overseas, maybe your starting over looks different. A divorce recovery, an empty nest, a career change you've been too scared to name out loud, a conversation you've been avoiding, a dream you've been keeping quiet. The fear is going to be there. That's not a sign you're on the wrong path. That's a sign that you're human. The question is, who's driving? y'all, let me tell you what happened after the 3 a.m. laptop moment. I submitted the application, the one I almost closed, and I got the interview in Landstuhl, Germany. The application is still in process, and I'm very hopeful because I think it went well. Now, I'm not saying that every fear leads to a breakthrough if you just keep pushing. That's peaches and cream thinking, and life just doesn't work that way. What I am saying is that the fear was lying to me. It told me I wasn't qualified. I was. It told me I was too old. I'm not. It told me the timing was wrong. But there's never a perfect time to start over. The perfect time is a myth we tell ourselves so we don't have to be brave. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really sit with this one. What would you pursue if you weren't afraid of the answer? Not if you weren't afraid at all, because that's not real, but if you weren't afraid of the answer. If you could handle whatever came back, a yes, a no, a not yet, what would you put yourself out there for? Sit with that. Because here's what I'm learning at 59. Regret weighs more than rejection. I'd rather get a no than to spend the next 10 years wondering what would have happened if I just hit submit. To bring this whole episode home, I'm going to give you one journal prompt today. Y'all know I love these. So write this down in your journal, piece of paper or old receipt, an envelope that you have lying around. Name the fear that's been riding shotgun in your car. What has it been telling you? And what's one small move you can make this week, not to eliminate the fear, but to drive anyway? Because here's what nobody told me about fear. It doesn't leave. I used to think if I just got brave enough, healed enough, prayed enough, the fear would pack its bag and go. But it doesn't. It just evolves. The fear I had at 29 was about whether I'd measure up. The fear I have at 59 is about whether I've waited too long. Different costume, same visitor. And y'all, that used to discourage me. Now I think it's actually the point. The goal was never to become fearless. The goal was to stop letting fear have the final say. I'm still scared. I was scared at 3 a.m. I was scared when I hit submit. I'll probably be scared when I get on that plane. But scared and moving is still moving. Scared and submitting is still submitting. Scared and starting is still starting. You don't have to evict the fear. You just have to stop letting it vote on your life. Because here's what's on the other side of that laptop moment. Not a different Vanessa. Not a fearless Vanessa. The same Vanessa. Just one who decided that fear doesn't get veto power anymore. I didn't wait until I was ready. I didn't wait until the math was perfect. I didn't wait until I felt brave. I did it scared. And I'm starting to think that's the only kind of brave that actually counts. So what's next in the series? I'll keep you updated on the overseas job hunt, of course. If something changes, you will be the first to know. And in part 3, I want to talk about what happens when the door actually opens. Because that brings its own kind of fear. And we need to talk about that too. If this resonated with you, if you've ever sat on the edge of your bed at 3 a.m., scared to submit on something that mattered, leave a comment below and tell me about it. And y'all, here's a little something extra. I mentioned it in the last episode. For the duration of this series, the piece before the Pivot Toolkit is 50% off. I wanted to make it easy for anyone who's standing on their own bridge right now. Because half the battle is having the right tools when fear starts talking. I got you. Link is in the description. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that starting over isn't just for the young. And if you're new here, my name is Vanessa, and this is Ways of Change, where we talk about what it really looks like to start over with faith, strategy, and a whole lot of it's all figure-outable. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Thanks for riding this wave with me. And remember, y'all, you're never too late, and your peace is never too far.